Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, you're going to be listening to a hypnosis session to help a client that had a addiction or dependency on using cannabis. And he had started in childhood, so kind of early teens, and had used it on and off throughout his whole life into his 40s. But it was reaching a point where the things that cannabis used to give them weren't doing that anymore. Clearly, they'd built up some kind of tolerance to it, but it just wasn't having the positive effects that they used to justify keep on using before, but it was having increasing detrimental effects. So an impact on health, coughing, lung pain, that kind of stuff. So what you're going to hear in this hypnosis session is a way of looking at cannabis use within this context as the kind of thing that it doesn't make sense to do anymore. And a lot of people will start a behavior for a reason. So if you think of teenagers, sometimes when they start smoking, it gives them the perception of being rebellious or cool, or, access to a group of people that might be considered, a higher status social group. What tends to happen with a lot of drugs, whether it's kind of nicotine, alcohol, cannabis, whatever it might be, is that it reaches a point where the original reason for doing it is no longer there, but then you get the psychological or the physiological dependency or addiction on that substance. So in this hypnosis session, you're going to hear a way of looking at this as something that no longer makes sense because it's not doing what it's meant to do. There's an element of tapping into alternative ways of coping with different things that would do that and be more beneficial, because my belief system is that addiction is not a disease. That's my belief system. Addictions quite often are either a habit because it's happened through emotional association and repetition for a long period of time, or it's a coping mechanism to deal with certain triggers in life. And this individual were using cannabis to deal with stressful situations, to deal with the stresses and strains of life, except it wasn't actually helping. But there were other things that may help better. So this is designed for someone that might be dependent on cannabis and doesn't want to be, and would rather have a different choice that they could make. This was created for an individual, so some of the references might not be relevant to you if you're a cannabis user and don't want to be. So there is the opportunity for you to click a link in the show notes to schedule a free consultation call to explore working with me directly. But you might find that this hypnosis session is useful for you, even though it was created for someone else. That's my intention with this podcast, is that I want to help the individual I'm working with, but if I can help just one or two other people in the world as a ripple effect, then that's beneficial. So find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, just get a sense that tension, any stress is leaving your body in your outward breath. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want you to imagine that you have a radar that can scan your entire body for any feelings of tension, stress, or anxiety. Maybe you can imagine it as an X-ray or a laser scanning your body like some futuristic technology, pinpointing where in your body are clues of tension or stress. And for some people, they hold on to tension around their forehead. Muscles might be tense around the temple or the jaw. Sometimes the clue is the occasional unconscious twitch in a finger or an eyelid. But as you breathe in and breathe out, give yourself permission to release that tension, enabling it to leave your body in your outward breath, enabling you to go deeper and deeper relaxed. That's right. I want you to use the power of your imagination to picture a cabin, maybe somewhere in nature, somewhere surrounded by incredible trees. Maybe there's lakes, maybe blue skies in summer. And maybe you can imagine seeing that cabin from above like a bird's eye view. But I want you to imagine seeing yourself somewhere near that cabin, surrounded by nature, looking relaxed. And then imagine that you're shifting perspective from that overhead view into your body, but there in nature. Maybe you can smell the freshness of the air, the trees. Most people, when they're out in nature, they slow down their breathing, not because they have to. It just naturally happens. Muscles tend to be relaxed because nature has a different pace to normal life. And I want you to connect with that feeling of being at peace, of being calm, of feeling deeply connected with yourself. That's right. As your body relaxes, your imagination becomes more active. Imagination is the interface between the conscious and the unconscious mind. There are so many things that would be useless to you without an interface. Imagine having the most powerful computer, but without a monitor or a keyboard. There's nothing you can do with it. Maybe there's had a time in your life where you had a powerful smartphone and then the screen stopped working. I want you to get a sense that imagination is a useful interface. And you know that to be true because there's been times in your life where a good idea came to you through inner dialogue or a vision of a future. Some of your biggest life decisions, you've been guided not through your unconscious, but through how your unconscious has communicated with your conscious. Remembering a memory, having a thought or an idea, having a gut feel that warned you of one thing and nudged you in a different direction. And as you activate the power of your imagination, you're increasing your connection to your subconscious mind. Allow that to amplify. And one of the things that the subconscious mind can do very well is bring up memories that are useful to create a change. I want you to imagine you're witnessing the first time you ever tried cannabis. Maybe seeing yourself as just a boy. Maybe you can observe the circumstances. Maybe there was curiosity, intrigue. But I want you to imagine that that boy, maybe 12 or 13 years old, had limited information on which to make that decision. And I want you to get a sense that a belief was formed in that moment about what taking cannabis meant. For some people, there's a feeling of significance, curiosity. Whatever it was for you, just accept that that belief was formed with the limited information you had back then. But if you had all the knowledge now and could go back to that moment, perhaps what you believed back then you would know not to be true. And I want you to imagine knowing what you now know, going back to that moment and updating a belief or evaluation as to what that first event meant. And once you feel like you've made that change, let me know by nodding your head. I want you to get a sense that new evaluations create new belief systems. What something means, and sometimes who people think they are. Isn't it interesting that some behaviors are linked to the identity? Some people run, and some people are runners. Some people work, other people make that job their identity. And when it comes to cannabis or smoking, some people link it to just something they do, and other people link it to who they are. And I want you to imagine letting go of any beliefs that this is something other than just a behavior. This is something that you've done throughout your life, not someone that you are. And when you've released any connection to identity, let me know by nodding your head. I want you to get a sense that when this is just something that you do, it becomes easier to think, does it still make sense to do this? Throughout your life, there's been things that you used to do that you don't do anymore. They were right at one point in your life. But then when you evaluated things, you thought, kind of doesn't make sense anymore. I want you to get a sense that this is something like that. And I want you to tap into an idea that if this is just something that you do, people do things for reasons. People are reasonable when the reasons are good enough. But why would you do something if the thing itself is not doing what it's meant to do? I want you to think of all those old belief systems as to what cannabis was meant to do for you. How it was meant to make you feel. How it was meant to make you cope. How it can give you an edge or help you in some way. And then I want you to think of all the evidence that you have in your life that simply isn't true. I want you to create overwhelming evidence that cannabis isn't doing what it promises. And in fact, maybe contributing to the exact opposite. If it's meant to take stress away, I want you to think of one or two occasions that it caused stress in your life. If it's meant to take away feelings of anxiety, I want you to think of one or two occasions where anxiety increased. If it was designed to help you cope, I want you to think of an occasion where you then had to cope with the addiction. I want you to get a sense that what if all along it was a trick? It promised something but then didn't deliver. And there are many things in the world like that. Narratives that lure people in. And sometimes when they find the reality, it feels like it's too late. There are people that studied 4, 5, 6 years for what they thought a profession was going to be like. And then when they got there, they realized that it wasn't like that TV show or movie that they saw. I want you to get a sense that cannabis has been this type of trick for you. That all along, it never quite lived up to its promise. And I want you to imagine that knowing what you now know, with all of that knowledge and experience, if you were to start for the very first time, you probably wouldn't. I want you to accept the suggestion that what you're not changing, you're choosing. Which means that every day you have to make a new choice that this still is something you want to do. And if you get the sense that this is no longer a useful choice, a helpful choice, a beneficial choice, and it's causing more problems than it's giving solutions, let me know by nodding your head. I want you to decide that one hand represents the part that has wanted to keep on using cannabis, and another hand represents the part that knows that it's already not doing what it's designed to do and it could cause health problems in the future. And if the part that wants you to keep using cannabis isn't for cannabis itself, but because what cannabis is meant to do for you, let me know by nodding your head. In which case, the compromise is there are things that do what cannabis is meant to do better than cannabis does them. Which means you get to help yourself in all the ways that you've been helping yourself before with cannabis, but without any of those consequences. And I want you to imagine all those things that you could do to change your physical or emotional state to make you feel more resourceful. Maybe that's breathing in fresh air, exercising in a way that changes your body and how it feels, Maybe walking with your dog or walking in nature. Or maybe it's doing things with your body like playing golf or yoga. But I want you to imagine that all of these things, while they're more effective than cannabis at genuinely changing your resources without the downside, they're not quite as quick. So I want you to imagine that from this point onwards, a single breath will now be more effective than what you were doing with cannabis. I want you to imagine there's some kind of trigger, a feeling of stress or worry or concern or how you're going to cope. But I want you to imagine you breathe in at the exact speed and pace that you would normally vape on cannabis. Hold it for the exact length of time and then release it. And let's try that again, but this time on the idea that you're breathing in a feeling of resourcefulness and you're exhaling any tension or stress or anything that's unresourceful. Breathe in at that same rate. Hold it and release that tension. And if your unconscious mind accepts that this is even quicker than the time it would take to grab a vape, and it would still make you feel more resourceful and help you to cope, but without any of the downsides, let me know by nodding your head. I want you to imagine that you're going to allow one hand, the hand that is tired of all the health consequences of cannabis, and the other hand that represents its desire to help you cope with the tough moments of life. And I want you to, at the level that your unconscious mind is happy to find more useful alternatives, to slowly move the two hands together where they meet in the middle of your chest. When both fingers interlock, you're signaling to yourself and your unconscious mind that you now have a better vehicle than cannabis to do what cannabis promised all along. That's it. And I want you to imagine what that future looks like. I want you to see yourself like you're someone else, dealing with the next stressful moment. Only this time, rather than reaching for that vape, you're seeing yourself breathe in a particular way. But imagine yourself breathing in a resourceful feeling of relaxation and exhaling any stress, anxiety, or tension. And the first few times it seems weird because there isn't that vape in your hand. But notice, the more you do it, the more just breathing in and breathing out makes you feel even better than the vape, because it's a state change without the consequences. You can do this anytime, anywhere. In any moment, you can feel immediately more resourceful and exhale any feelings of tension or worry or stress. And imagine yourself perhaps 3 weeks, 3 months, or even 3 years in the future, where a very stressful life event may happen. Maybe a change in work circumstances, a bereavement, something very stressful. And I want you to see that that future version of you now has several ways of handling this that don't involve cannabis. I want you to see that future version of you in social situations. And in those social situations, you can see yourself around other people smoking or vaping cannabis, but there is no desire in you. No righteousness, no judgment. It's just, you can see in your face, it's not something you do anymore. And if all parts of your unconscious mind are happy that Cannabis is your past, and your future is about freedom. The freedom to get all the things you wanted without any of the downsides. And if all parts are ready for that future, let me know by nodding your head. And I want you to imagine stepping into that future version of you so that that becomes your new identity. Don't want it, don't need it. I'm done with it. Connect with that part that used to sit and wait for a moment of weakness. To know that even if you feel weak, cannabis is so far down the list, it's on another page. And maybe that part will be waiting a long time. So maybe that part is better off, given that it wants to help you anyway, to now encourage you to do the things that will help you without the consequences. I want you to imagine looking out on the incredible scenery of this forest, of this nature, but feeling like you are now different. Imagine returning to the present, but taking all those changes with you. As you take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, completely connect with who you are in the present, but with a new identity, a new way of thinking, deciding to take specific steps to align yourself with your new identity. That might be throwing certain things away. Not because this is temporary, because this now represents the final page of one chapter closing before you write the new page of a new chapter, starting the count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.